Is the ability to alter weather real? Do we have the technology to do it?
Beyond what most can even imagine. There's somewhere in the range of 40 to 60 million tons of these toxic nanoparticles are being dispersed, sprayed into our skies annually. Blizzard in New Orleans, blizzard on the Gulf Coast, blizzard in Florida. What was happening at the exact same window of time? In the polar regions, Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, Siberia, it was above freezing and raining. That's what they don't want you to know, what's happening in the polar regions. The true severity of damage done to the planet, much of it from these operations to begin with, they're not about to let go of this weapon, Chad.
You said the word they are doing it. Who are the they? Hey guys, welcome to a kind of a special edition of the Resilient Show, where we are just gonna jump right into a topic that I have been really concerned about, and that's the cloud seeding and what altering weather patterns in the United States and worldwide. And this has been long said to be conspiracy. We now know it's not conspiracy. That in fact, this technology has been around a long time. And so I'm digging into it. I certainly am not an expert. That's why we're bringing on an expert in this, Dane Wigington. Did I say it right, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Dane Wigington is an expert in his field, and before, without me kind of butchering his background, Dan, can you tell us a little bit why you're qualified to speak on this subject?
What brought me into this battle, Chad, is that when I tried to get out of smoggy Southern California and retired to Northern California, built a large off-grid home. This is 25 years ago. My home, I have a background in renewable energy. I worked for Bechtel Power when I was younger. That's the world's largest engineering firm. Built a large off-grid home, was the cover article of the world's largest renewable energy magazine. And no sooner was I done with this project, I was losing massive amounts of my solar power uptake from whatever these aircraft were emitting in our skies. I mean, like 60, 70% of my solar power uptake. That's not visible light reduction, but it's direct sunlight reduction. And I knew something was wrong. I knew that certainly wasn't, quote, condensation. Whatever these aircraft were emitting was something else. I dove into research, was very shocked to find mountains of data on climate engineering, geoengineering, solar radiation management. Those are the science terms for what's happening in our skies. I looked for the primary elements contained in climate engineering patents and operations. I began to test my precipitation to see if I would find those elements there. I didn't want to find them there, but I did, starting with aluminum nanoparticulates. That's highly toxic to all life forms. The more rain testing I did, the more material showed up, until after 18 months of research, I had a rain test with 3,450 ppb, parts per billion, of aluminum in the rain. That's toxic rain. What was I to do but engage in this fight? That was 20 plus years ago. I've been at it ever since, Chad. Very few understand the gravity and immediacy of the threat posed by what's taking place in our skies.
What's your position now, and who are you working with now?
Geoengineeringwatch.org. That is our group. We're the largest website in the world on this subject. We are non-political. We don't market or sell anything. And we have produced the standard on this issue, a documentary called The Dimming. In that documentary, there's former U.S. Air Force generals, former Canadian Minister of Defense, former government scientists, and testing that only we have done. No one else has done the testing we've done, not just surface testing of precipitation, but we took a NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab, top scientist in it. We took that to altitude. No one will ever get access to that aircraft again. I assure you of that. There was a lot of blowback for us acquiring that use. And we sampled what heavy aircraft were emitting. We took then a private jet testing platform to even higher altitude, same testing. That was all processed at Rensselaer Polytechnic in New York. That's a world-renowned testing institution. We found exactly what we knew we'd find, Chad, starting with climate engineering elements of aluminum nanoparticles, and we all get to breathe what they're spraying.
So, big question is, I mean, and I think you answered it in your intro, is the ability to alter weather real? Do we have the technology to do it? I think the answer you said is yes.
Beyond what most can even imagine. And they use the localized, very small cloud seeding operations, typically a single engine, propeller driven aircraft with a few flares on the wings, that may be able to distribute in a single flight 5 pounds of material, maybe 10 tops. KC-135 can carry 100 tons in a single payload, depending on the altitude. We work directly with the University of Minnesota. And again, I want to separate these two. localized cloud seeding climate engineering. It's comparing an ant to an elephant. We work with University of Minnesota. I'll finish with this on lab testing, about 500 tests, and quantified the material in the precipitation, projected that globally. It appears somewhere in the range of 40 to 60 million tons. 40 to 60 million tons of these toxic nanoparticles are being dispersed, sprayed into our skies annually.
You said the word they. They are doing it. Who are the they?
Ultimately, those behind these programs are always those who print the money. They control militaries, they control political circles, they control media, they control everything. Those who print the money. We know we have many agencies involved, and they're certainly compartmentalized. We have government documents, we have Senate documents. One Senate document, 800 pages long, is posted on our site, and we've highlighted the important parts so you don't have to go through all of that. But we know these programs go back decades. Even that particular document from the 70s outlining budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars then, outlining the intergovernmental cooperation with these programs, even between, quote, otherwise adversarial nations, China, Russia, US. We know the Russian climate engineering scientists were in the US touring our facilities in the 60s during the height of the Cold War. Our scientists there. You can't just geoengineer over your own country without affecting the entire world. They all have their own purposes for engaging these programs, but they are all working together just like they did with COVID-19.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the who is one thing. The why is, why would someone do this? I mean, I could see, and I've read articles of us doing this in Vietnam. We, flooded the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and, that would give you a good, strategic reason in warfare why you would do it. But why in the United States? Why would we cloud seed over America? What would be the purpose? What's the motive behind it?
There's many layers to this question. First, as far as those who still think at this late hour that those in power are here to help us, time to wake the hell up. We have Zbigniew Brzezinski, former presidential advisor, going all the way back to Johnson, stating on the record, your listeners can look this up, it's a well-known quote, stating that with today's technology, it's far easier to kill 1 million people than to control them. This is a covert weapon of war. It's the crown jewel weapon of the controllers with which they can, have been, and are bringing populations to their knees without those populations ever even knowing they're under assault. They can blame nature. They just did it in Texas, didn't they? Whatever the reasons, whatever the agendas, I'm not speculating on that. I can't know that. But the fact that these events are not natural, we can and do know that. As far as the stated purpose, the official stated purpose, they're not admitting these programs are going on, but they're clamoring that they want to deploy climate engineering. It's been ongoing for 80 years already, shockingly obvious in our skies. But the stated purpose, solar radiation management, is to fill the sky with light scattering particles to deflect some of the sun's incoming thermal energy to slow down the warming of the planet. But we know from every science arena that doing so, although it can provide temporary toxic cooling, it comes at the cost of even worse overall warming, destroyed ozone layer, disrupted hydrological cycle, and a completely contaminated planet. What a surprise. So ultimately, Chad, this is a weapon of power and control, and that power and control translates also to manipulating the perception of populations to keep them asleep at the wheel, to keep them infighting, and the type of event we see doing that. Chad, have you seen that almost every major storm with any moisture has massive straight line winds and baseball and softball size hail? Notice that?
Yes. Yeah.
It's called chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. They're patented processes. They're literally chemically nucleating cloud moisture, and that produces these massive hailstones that are now battering everything. Insurance companies are canceling everybody for hail anything. But when they can engineer, Chad, do you remember last January 21st, interesting date, by the way, the blizzard in New Orleans? Remember that?
Yes.
Blizzard in New Orleans, blizzard on the Gulf Coast, blizzard in Florida. What was happening at the exact same window of time? In the polar regions, Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, Siberia, it was above freezing and raining while there was a blizzard in New Orleans. That's what they don't want you to know, what's happening in the polar regions. The true severity of damage done to the planet, much of it from these operations to begin with. They're not about to let go of this weapon, Chad.
Is there any regulations against it? Is it regulated at all?
Zero by design. And they've made also, the whole system is designed around masking these operations, including air testing. And that's critically important. So most official air testing is for PM10, 10 microns, occasionally PM2.5. We're talking about nanoparticles. They're so small. Most people don't understand how small these particles are. You can fit 100,000 nanoparticles across the width of a single human hair. That's inconceivably small. Smaller the particle, the more damaging and dangerous they are, the more bioavailable they are, the more bioaccumulative they're building up and everything. So you have this mountain of toxic nanoparticles raining down on all of us. We're sucking it up with every breath we take. I don't care where you live. It's ubiquitous. And the whole system is designed not to show this. And I've had EPA top officials at the state capitol in California, closed door meeting arranged by congressional reps, tell me to my face, whole system is rigged. We're told to test for combustion particulates only larger particle sizes, PM10, everything else under the radar.
So I'm in Texas right now. July 7th, we had a massive flood. I don't know how many. I'm guessing probably death toll will be close to 100. And then you have the CEO of Rainmaker saying that just 4 or 5 days prior that they were actually in the area conducting cloud seeding. And so this is an admission from the company of Rainmaker, the CEO of Rainmaker. He did say that it had absolutely nothing to do with the floods, but I mean, it seems like not a coincidence to me. What's your thoughts on that?
Whether they're using him as an intentional distraction or he's put himself in that position, I don't know. His name is Augustus Dorico, and he has connections with Peter Thiel. We have pictures of him nuzzled up to Bill Clinton. Whatever his part in the play is, if that's to distract people from the elephant in the sky of climate engineering, we can't say for certain, but there's no question whatever he did had nothing to do with what happened. Because in addition to the seeding component of this, again, his aircraft might carry 5 to 10 pounds total tops into cloud moisture. Single U.S. military tanker, KC-10, KC-135, C-17, they're carrying upwards of 100 tons in a single payload. But in addition to that, what is used to manipulate storm formation and moisture and direct it is the NEXRAD frequency transmission network in the US. And we can record this. I'm very surprised we still have access to these data loops. But what these transmissions do, and again, we can record it in real time, we have with hurricane landings like Harvey, Helene, Michael, Ian. These transmissions, they're very powerful and they have a repelling effect on an ionized air mass. The storm's ionized with these electrically conductive particles. So in the case of Texas, what do we see there? When you energize these transmissions on every side of that storm moisture, it in effect holds it in place. It causes it to precipitate entirely in one region. And that's exactly what happened. And that is a much more elaborate, powerful, and certainly not under the control. That network is only under the control, ultimately, of DOD and other U.S. governmental agencies. So that is the primary factor that held that moisture in place, caused it to precipitate all in one place. And again, we've recorded this again. Your listeners can search geoengineeringwatch.org hurricanes, and they can see in real time, for example, with Hurricane Harvey in Texas, how do they know 7 days in advance that storm would go where it did and sit there for 3 days? They knew 7 days in advance because that's literally the scheduled weather. They have that much control. These are patented processes, and your listeners can see the frequency transmissions interacting with the storm in real time. We recorded all of it. It's indisputable, and it's mind-boggling that we live in a country, or we live in a world with the whole of academia pretending this isn't happening to protect their paychecks and pensions.
So, I mean, the conclusion that you're saying with Rainmaker is that they didn't have the ability to create that effective of a catastrophic event with the flood. It would have been someone more with more capability than them.
No chance. They're using him as a distraction. What other distractions have they used? Lee Zeldin, head of the U.S. EPA, go back about 2 months, him pretending he was going to address this issue then. What did he focus on then that completely blew back in his face because it was so utterly and totally ridiculous? His attempt to address geoengineering was to focus on 2 Silicon Valley actors, PR stunt actors, with a geoengineering startup called Make Sunsets. They had launched 147 balloons total in Baja and Nevada, balloons that carried less than 10 grams of SO2 per balloon. If we translate that mathematically, that would mean this company would need to launch 10 million balloons to equal one U.S. military tanker payload. It's total PR stunt distraction, and that's what Lee Zeldin is focusing on to save us from geoengineering. It's mind-numbingly ridiculous. So was his statement yesterday when he pretends they're going to be very transparent in these programs. And he was talking to the public, if you saw that, Chad, like he was talking to 5-year-olds, because apparently that's what they think we are, and pretending they're going to tell us anything, just like they're doing with the Epstein files. Really?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother subject, but 100% in line with you on that. That's, with cloud seeding, can you just break down simply like how cloud seeding works? Like I know you talked about it a little bit, but like how does it actually work?
This is key though, because people think that these kind of operations only augment rainfall when we're talking about the large military climate engineering operations, but they are very effective, even more effective at diminishing, dispersing, and completely cutting off rainfall, creating drought. So now let's look at the fires like I have in my backyard right now. Single greatest factor in the uncontrollable firestorms is climate engineering. They can and are. They're doing it right now. They're cutting off the flow of any precipitation, even clouds, to Western North America. And this preparation of the forest, the source of ignition is a separate subject completely. Any moron with a match can start a fire. What is setting the template for these fires to burn with such ferocity? That is absolutely, positively climate engineering. And to back this up, we have right now, we found a U.S. military document, 140 pages long, titled Forest Fires as a Military Weapon, that describes exactly the kind of pre-preparation we see even up to spans of years before torching an area. Let's look at Lahaina. Lahaina was declared a flash drought area, and these are desiccant particles, so they dry out atmospheric moisture, and that sucks the moisture out of everything else on the ground, foliage and everything else. So it's the size of the particle seeded determines whether it will rain more or not at all. If too small particles, too small condensation nuclei, the moisture doesn't combine and fall, it just migrates. So you get these days and days of featureless skies with no rain falling, and they can migrate that moisture wherever they want. In the case of Pacific Palisades, no rain there for 8 months before that event. What's alarming about this military document we found, it's posted at geoengineeringwatch.org, 140 pages. They cited 17 study sites within the borders of the U.S. for these operations, and LA was one. Shasta County, where I live, was one. What are they doing studying sites within the borders of the U.S. for this type of operation? So climate engineering cuts off the moisture. We have toxic particles in the rain. Our rain is toxic everywhere, all over the globe. We have peer-reviewed study to prove that. Not just climate engineering elements. We have industrial pollution, PFAS chemicals, but climate engineering elements are a majority particulate matter. So on the fires, they can cut off the moisture. This toxic rain is killing soil microbiome and root systems, so the trees die from the ground up. Chad, have you seen every time the wind blows, trees are falling over everywhere now?
I just had one cut down in my backyard this morning.
There you go. So the toxic aluminum, we have peer-reviewed study on that. That not only kills soil microbiome, again, it's toxic to all life forms, period, but it causes root systems to shut down nutrient uptake. Trees die a slow, protracted death. The atmospheric spraying of oxidative particles and the frequency transmissions are destroying the ozone layer. Does the sun feel hot as hell on your skin of late and on surfaces? If you haven't noticed, try to take notice, because it's way worse. We had a former NASA contract engineer metering UV radiation for us. Geoengineering destroying the ozone layer. It's not hairspray cans, it's geoengineering. So we're getting UVC on the surface. That's killing the trees as well. They're dying from the top down, bottom up, no moisture. And these are incendiary particles. So I know you're former military, and these incendiary particles build up and they start to coat forest foliage, the forest floor, structures. In the case of Lahaina, aluminum is such an effective incendiary, it's in thermite. So again, you combine all these elements, we have more dry lightning now because they're reducing precipitation, ionizing the atmosphere, making it more electrically conductive, more lightning, so more dry strikes. From every conceivable direction, from drought to deluge, climate engineering is hammering populations.
We have billionaires like Bill Gates that have been outspoken advocates for climate manipulation. How much control do these people have, and how can we hold them accountable for being inciting these kind of programs?
Gates is certainly a very unscrupulous character, and his participation in vaccine programs abroad and so forth that have wrought havoc in those populations, all of that is bad. I mean, this guy's a.
I guess are they funding it privately, like, or they lobbying politicians?
I should have got to that point sooner. I'm sorry. I mean, although I just have great disdain for this guy, he's not.
Oh, same.
He's not a part of what's going on. These programs were in operation before he was born. Climate engineering operations were first immediately deployed right after World War II. Chad, you've seen, many people refer to this, that, well, we see all the B-17 bombers leaving the massive plumes in World War II, so we know this is just condensation, right? I mean, people make that argument. We found on U.S. military archives, because we knew they had to be beta testing during World War II if they deployed immediately after World War II. We found film footage, military film footage of B-17s flying in formation, one filming another directly above it, emitting a massive plume that is shut off instantly like it was cut with a knife. Did that plane fall out of the air, fall out of formation? No. Stayed right where it was. That was obviously a dispersion. They were beta testing in World War II, period, and all military tankers and all commercial jet aircraft are equipped with what's known as a high bypass turbofan jet engine. It's a jet-powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through that engine is not combusted. By design, that engine is nearly incapable of producing any, quote, condensation trail, except under rare and extreme circumstances. We have up-close photographs of these nozzles on the retrofit nozzles on the wing pylons aimed into the exhaust jet stream to make this look like condensation. We have film footage of them turning on and off. Their transponders are commonly turned off when we try to track them. Only the military can do that. So again, this is an elephant in the equation that far too many are pretending isn't happening.
Just a few years ago, if somebody said chemtrails, it was like almost a tinfoil hat laughing thing. Yes. But and I think now, people, it's not considered conspiracy anymore. What do you think the change came from?
Well, again, the consequences are now beyond catastrophic. It's happening all over the world. What just happened in Texas is happening all over the world, from unprecedented incineration to devastating, deadly deluges. And once you disrupt the system, you disrupt the entire system. And again, when people say, well, why would they want to use weather as a weapon? Why wouldn't they? Again, they can and are bringing populations to their knees without those populations ever even knowing they're under assault. Chad, you remember after 9/11 that former NATO Supreme Commander General Wesley Clark was given a list of countries to be targeted? Remember that? That list clearly existed before 9/11. So is it just a coincidence that every one of those countries subsequently underwent a once in 1,000 year drought? Is that a coincidence? Mathematically, statistically, it's an impossible coincidence. And we have the leaders of those countries, in the case of Iran, on the floor of the UN stating NATO is cutting off our precipitation on film, on the record. That's weather warfare. I wonder why these people hate us so much. So again, this is a covert weapon of war. Africa, AFRICOM, U.S. bases in Africa there, those countries droughted out, brought to their knees, governments forced to allow U.S. occupation. So I'm sorry for those that want to be blind patriots. Patriotism means facing the truth and holding those in power accountable. That's patriotism. That's what we're trying to do. I know that's what you're trying to do, and I'm very grateful to you for that.
Yeah, no, same. I'm definitely grateful for your voice. And there's the documentary, The Dimming. I definitely recommend people go to watch that documentary. I interviewed on my show Eric Heckler, who spends time out in Antarctica, and he talked about this thing called the HAARP, and talked about an earthquake weapon. So there's tons of different types of weapons out there. Yes. Have you heard of this earthquake?
Yes, tectonic weaponry is real. It is real. HAARP is in Alaska, and that's an ionosphere heater, and another facility that Heckler was talking about in Antarctica that may be even more powerful. These are weapons of mass destruction, period. So what does HAARP do? In the case of that facility, we have more statistics. HAARP can transmit up to 3.6 million watts of power into the electrically charged ionosphere, causes an electrical chain reaction, superheats the ionosphere, causes the atmosphere to bulge up and down. The downward push creates a high pressure dome in the lower atmosphere. And that's what they use to steer the upper level wind currents, which then steers the moisture currents. That's what we have in the U.S. right now, Chad. We have a high pressure heat dome again parked over the western U.S., so we have fires burning everywhere. Massive heat. I mean, we're 110 degrees in the forests of Northern California today. 110. day after day, everything is dying here. But that clockwise rotation of that high pressure heat dome steers all the moisture up and over us, and it comes back down in the eastern US, which is the most chemically cooled region in the world for the last 13 years, because most Americans live there and they think, well, if it's off and on cool and rainy here, how can anybody be complaining about what's happening around the world? Yeah, so what if the heat index in the Middle East right now is 150 degrees in places, the feels like temperature? Americans don't know that because it's not outside their front door, and that's part of the psychological operation here. But on the tectonic weaponry, if your followers searched Fukushima earthquake, atmospheric heating, MIT, we have MIT acknowledging on the record what they called, quote, extremely anomalous atmospheric heating directly above the 2011 Fukushima earthquake epicenter for 3 days prior to that quake. That is signature ionosphere heater bouncing a signal off the electrically charged atmosphere. The reflective now atmosphere with these particles. They can bounce that signal back down into seismically sensitive strata. You're basically microwaving seismically sensitive strata. What happens when you microwave something long enough? Something has to give. So again, we have an absolute glaring red flag of the Fukushima quake. Why would they want to do that to Japan? Many asked that. Japan was starting to ally with its regional partners at that time, and after that, they were right back in the U.S. hip pocket. I guess they would be, right? Remember when Turkey told the UN to take a leap? Remember that? And clusters of earthquakes hit Turkey days later, wiped them out. Same in Haiti. During a U.S. presidential election, Chad, back to Antarctica, John Kerry, who was a candidate, was in Antarctica during the election. He flies back to Christchurch, New Zealand, gathers up all the U.S. diplomats who were scheduled for meetings the next day and carts them out, and a massive quake hits Christchurch a few hours later. And now New Zealand is in the Western Empire hip pocket as well. All just coincidences, I guess, right?
There was a comment from Hillary Clinton in response to Christchurch. Can't remember what it was, but it was like right on schedule or something like that.
Yep. There you go.
Remember exactly what she said, but it suggested complicity. What's another
Americans
Clinton body count?
You're completely yeah. One more for the Clintons, right? Yeah. Americans need to wake the hell up. Our paradigm is blowing apart at the seams right now, and they're watching political theater and somehow thinking that there's any sort of good intent here. There isn't. Every breath we take is toxic. It's building up in our systems. It's literally contaminating everything on the planet. We need to deal with this or we're done. And again, it gets worse. I'll leave it with this. We know we have polymer fibers and graphene in our rain. That's from about 100 lab tests in Minnesota, working with UC Minnesota. Both of those elements are used militarily as biological carrier platforms, which means to carry a pathogen from the clouds to the ground. And we have the second most recognized geoengineer in the world, Dr. Ken Caldera, former DOD scientist. We own a recording of him stating what he did for the DOD was to design methods of spraying pathogens in the clouds to infect the populations below. And CV-19, we had 85 countries infected in 3 days. That's indicative of an airborne dispersion. We have Italian scientists saying they found CV-19 attached to airborne particulates. Don't all these dots connect? Why wouldn't we think that once they know they're losing control of power, why wouldn't they disperse something like Ebola or Marburg and level the field overnight?
Dane, everything you're saying, I'm right here with you, but there's a lot of people who are still skeptics of this. What would you say to those who think this is all conspiracy, that you and I are, both out of our mind for believing this is a possibility? What would you say to those who are still on the fence?
Yeah, they won't be skeptical for long, Chad.
Yeah.
Reality is about to blow up in their face. And again, what I would argue is have a reason for your conclusions. Have a reason. I've had double PhD academicians that I know well in the sciences state to me, to my face, former friends now, well, it can't be that bad because it just can't be that bad. What kind of a moronic basis is that for a conclusion? Just because you can't face reality, that means it must not be reality? So again, we need to find our courage and ask ourselves why we're here. Is it for personal pursuits of pleasure, or is it to make a difference, to try to preserve some future for our posterity? And I think that answer is clear. So let's all get on deck. And everybody can help in this. Everybody from their own home computer for free by sharing a link to the dimming, for example. Send it to your elected officials. We're working with legislators all over the country, by the way. I'm talking to them every single day in different states. they're passing legislation banning this over their state. It's symbolic. They can't enforce it, but it matters because it's putting it on the radar. But all of us can help with that effort. Send that link to media, to agency officials, ag groups, farm groups. I mean, the list is endless. And CC about 50 other aware and awake people, openly CC them so that whoever you're sending the link to, telling them to investigate and why aren't they talking about this, so they know a lot of people are listening to that conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Dana, I'm with you. I think educating yourself is the first step in people getting off of this as a conspiracy. And, once they
Yes.
can learn more, they can see that this is actually serious, something that does require action to be taken by citizens as well as those who we elect to represent us. The Deming is one place that people could go. What's some other places people? The Deming is a documentary, to be clear, that
Yes.
that Dane is part of, and you guys can find it. Amazon.
No, we posted that for free the day it was done. We spent way into six figures on that film. It's on social media platforms only, but it's for free to everyone. Always has been. And on our site, again, it's a big site. There's a lot of data there.
So, guys, if you're listening, go check out the Deming, check out the Dane's website, and look, everyone can do something. I think one of the things you could do is contact your local legislator, your congressman, your senator. There should be regulations to prevent this from happening over the skies in your state, and it's a state level, I think. Federal level issue, but also the state level is where I think you can make the most impact. Is just saying, hey, this can't happen in my state. Look what just happened in Texas, why wouldn't we want to regulate that?